I'm Brittany, this is Shen Way, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch gay things. Today, we are continuing our journey through Volume 2 of Guardian. We are on page 91 for Chapter 8. We previously left off with Shen Way being hot about it when it came to getting rid of Spirit. We're maybe he'll calm down, but probably not. Let's be honest. He'll probably just insist on being hot about it. But that's why we're here. So we read for a couple of hours. We take a break. We take a break about halfway through for a few minutes, and we usually get through about 40 to 50 pages. Please no spoilers in the chat because there's always at least a few people who are following along who have never experienced this story in any form before. I have seen the show. I have not read the book. That's it. Let us begin. Let me get this over here so I can see the chat. Are we at chapter 10? I'm gonna be honest. The bookmark fell out. So, if you tell me we're at chapter 10, I will believe you. For some reason, the bookmark does not want to stay in this book. I do not know why. I have never had this problem before. We are at chapter 10. Hilarious. Way too funny. I have my window open for a change, so my face may look a little green on this side. But you know what? Today is a day where I need as much nature in front of me as possible. And it's raining, and it's beautiful, and we're just gonna have all the green that we possibly can, even if it winds up on my face. So, chapter 10, thank you so much, chat. Chapter 10, page 125. I am a liar, which also means I need to make a note of new note of what page number we're hitting. We're on page 125, and we're aiming for 165 to 175, wherever that lands us. So, Zhao Yunlan was a little roughed up, but he didn't seem to have any serious injuries. He had redness on the back of his neck, perhaps due to a blow there, but beyond that, Shen Wei couldn't tell if there was anything else wrong. All he could do was sit uneasily at the head of Zhao Yunlan's bed, waiting for him to wake up. He slept until noon the next day, not waking even when his phone rang over and over again. The sun was due south by the time his fingers suddenly twitched. Shen Wei, who had started to get anxious, took hold of his hand. Yunlan. Before even opening his eyes, Zhao Yunlan grabbed the back of his neck. Ugh, what a fucking asshole. The fact that he had the energy to curse someone out went a long way in reassuring Shen Wei, until Zhao Yunlan said his name in a strangely muffled voice. Shen Wei answered immediately. Yes, what is it? Zhao Yunlan seemed a little confused. What time is it? How come you're still up? Shen Wei froze, then glanced out the window. The sun was high in the sky, making it almost blindingly bright in the apartment. Heart sinking, he waved a hand right in front of Zhao Yunlan's eyes, which upon close inspection looked faintly lost and unfocused. There was no reaction. When Shen Wei didn't respond, Zhao Yunlan knew something was wrong. He subconsciously turned an ear toward him. Shen Wei? As Shen Wei was about to answer, Zhao Yunlan reached out with unerring precision and caught Shen Wei's hand in front of his face. It was cold as ceramic. Zhao Yunlan fell silent, then eventually said, "Oh, something's wrong with my eyes, huh?" Shen Wei's free hand clenched into a tight fist as he desperately attempted to control his own voice. "I'm taking you to the hospital right now." That's one way to start a chapter, I guess. That's a scene break also. Zhao Yunlan was abnormally quiet on the drive, as if preoccupied. Upon getting out of the car, there were moments when he seemed a bit lost as they walked. Understandably, it would take time to adjust to sudden vision loss. He found that he almost didn't know which foot to step with and couldn't help wanting to grab at everything within reach, even with Shen Wei holding his hand. To Shen Wei, Zhao Yunlan's face looked unusually pale, Perhaps Ghostface had used excessive force. Shen Wei's own gaze darkened, coming dangerously close to betraying the suppressed evil underneath. The hospital staff he handed Zhao Yunlan off to nearly trembled with fright. To them, his vibe came across as some low-key mobster in a movie, someone who could somehow be a vegetarian and a devout Buddhist, and yet also a stone-cold killer. Unsurprisingly, tests revealed nothing wrong with Zhao Yunlan's eyes. The doctors were bewildered. There were no injuries or abnormalities, but the patient couldn't see a thing. After over half a day of poking and prodding, one doctor delicately suggested that the problem might be psychological, not physical, and recommended consulting a psychologist. Is there some sort of psychological state in which you can shut off your own vision? Or I guess maybe your brain thinks its vision has been shut off? I have never heard of that in my life, but it wouldn't surprise me. By the time they left the hospital, Zhao Yunlan, like some sort of unkillable cockroach, had adjusted to his blindness. He made a grab at the air, then said, "It's dark out, right?" It made Shen Way nervous when Zhao Yunlan kept his thoughts to himself, so he tried to keep him talking. "How did you know?" "The air feels a little moister and colder. I figured that meant the sun's gone down." Observant little shit. When they reached the car, Shen Way opened the door and used one hand to guide Zhao Yunlan and the other to make sure he didn't hit his head. After fastening Zhao Yunlan's seatbelt, Shen Way looked over and saw him smiling. "What are you smiling about?" "I was just thinking that if I'm old and senile someday, I'd like it if you still took care of me like this." Okay. All right. We just really went from 0 to like 120 miles per hour. Ooh, you gotta warn me before you say shit like that. Holy God. Okay. Shen Wei's heart stirred and his expression softened. I would have unhinged my jaw and swallowed the nearest street lamp. What do you mean? All he had to do was soften his expression. Granted, I'm an animated person, so I'm demonstrative in that way, but still. Whew. Zhao Yunlan continued. "If I start calling you Dad because I don't recognize anyone anymore, don't you dare answer to it. You're not allowed to boss me around to take advantage of me when I'm senile." Exasperated, Shen Way said, "Things would certainly be easier if you were senile." "What?" Zhao Yunlan made a show of being frightened and shocked. Grabbing his own collar, he said, "What do you have planned for me? Do you want to lock me up and force me to be yours?" Oh my God. Now we're in Wei Wuxian territory. Listen. I can't. I can't. I simply cannot. I've never been able to, and I don't plan to start now. I just can't. I don't know what to tell you. Shen Way was struck speechless. After half a day of being withdrawn while adjusting to his new blindness, Zhao Yunlan was blossoming again. As he got settled in the car, he began messing with the seat controls. First, he made it lie down flat, then he put it back up. Next, he explored the entire car with his hands. "Hey, I just realized that the passenger seat is indented. How come I never noticed it when I could see?" Turns out there are some fun things about being blind. Did you know there's a darkness experience exhibit downtown? The ticket costs 40 yuan. So really, I'm saving 40 yuan. This kind of revolutionary optimism was beyond Shen Wei's comprehension, and he could only manage a faint semblance of a smile in response. As he dropped Zhao Yunlan off right outside his building, Shen Way told him to stay put. But after parking, he came back only to find that Zhao Yunlan had already made his way to the curb alone and was practicing walking in a straight line, though he was about to fling himself into the embrace of a utility pole. Shen Way rushed over and grabbed Zhao Yunlan around the waist before he could knock himself out. Suddenly being lifted into the air was an exciting experience while blind. Zhao Yunlan actually let out a delighted whistle as if wanting Shen Way to do it again. Patting his arm, Shen Way leaned forward. There are stairs up ahead. I'll carry you on my back, because that has to happen at least once per danmei, or once per C-drama. This is a requirement. You know, I don't make the rules. Zhao Yunlan responded by stroking Shen Wei's back and smiling, but he made no move to obey. Gently, Shen Way asked, "What is it? Get on." Feeling around for Shen Wei's hand, Zhao Yunlan bent down to kiss the back of it. "How could I bear to let you carry me? What if I crush you with my weight?" Listen, I realize I signed up for the gay nonsense, but the gay nonsense is really nonsensing. He began slowly walking forward. If he hadn't bumped the first stair with his foot, Shen Way might almost have believed his eyesight had returned. His pace was steady and his steps were even. When he reached the elevator, he felt around for the buttons and pressed the right one. Then he turned slightly, waiting for Shen Way. Shen Way made sure to step heavily. "How did you know where the elevator was?" Without a trace of shame, Zhao Yunlan boasted, "With how observant I am, did you think I'm not familiar with my own place of residence? I don't need eyes to know the number of stairs or how many paces the stairs are from the elevator." That was, of course, absolute bullshit. Forget the number of paces. Zhao Yunlan was the kind of rough, careless person who couldn't even find his own teacup and slippers without scrambling around first. The truth, as Shen Way knew perfectly well, was that he must have been silently counting while being led downstairs that afternoon. Perhaps it was simply his personality, but somehow, no matter the circumstances, Zhao Yunlan always gave off an impression of, it's no big deal. Sometimes, even when whatever was happening was a big deal, people around him couldn't help being affected by his attitude. Zhao Yunlan calmly opened the door to his apartment and was just about to cross the threshold when a voice piped up from around his feet. "If you dare step on this lord's tail, you're fucking dead." He stopped, then bent down to feel around. "Daching?" It was immediately clear to the cat that something was wrong. He climbed up Zhao Yunlan's arm. "What's wrong with your eyes?" Zhao Yunlan felt around as he entered the apartment. "Oh," he said carelessly, "that feature's been temporarily deactivated." The fact that I would have made the exact same fucking joke does not escape me. I'm in this picture and I don't like it. Hello, come on. I'm not that far off base. Thank you. Shen Way grabbed him just before he collided with the door frame. "Be careful." Shocked, Daching jumped down onto the sofa. "What happened?" He shot an accusatory glance at Shen Way. Without a moment's hesitation, Shen Way said, "It's my fault." Zhao Yunlan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Everybody drink. "And how's that now?" He reached out a hand, but didn't manage to touch anything. Daching looked at that hand hanging in midair, with a disgusted expression that said, "This lordly cat only deigns to humor you because you look pitiful." The cat tilted his head and rubbed against Zhao Yunlan's palm. Zhao Yunlan laughed. "Don't worry, good luck and misfortune usually come hand in hand." Feeling around, he sat on the sofa and pulled a cigarette from his pocket. Gesturing arrogantly toward Daching, he said, "I can't see. Light it for me." Daching silently curled up into a ball of fluff, turned his back, and completely ignored Zhao Yunlan. It was Shen Way who took Zhao Yunlan's hand, lit the cigarette with a flick, and then pushed the ashtray in front of him. "Last night I met a little crow." Zhao Yunlan gave it a moment's thought and decided to redact some details of the previous night's events. He said something like, Something, Western Sea somewhere, Northern Sea somewhere, some distance from the shore. I didn't understand the rest of it. He was probably talking about some mountain. Dutching froze, so it was Shen Way who reacted first. A shadow fell over his face. Let's set that aside for now. How did you hurt your eyes? Ugh, don't even ask. Zhao Yunlan waved dismissively. It was all because of that damn bell. Dutching abruptly got to his feet. What kind of bell? I have it, Shen Wei offered, pulling a little golden bell covered in dust from his pocket. Are you talking about this? Dutching's pupils constricted. Why do you have it? What is it? Zhao Yunlan asked. Dutching circled Shen Wei's hand a few times, focused intently on the little bell. Finally, in a very low voice, he said, That's mine. He stole a glance at Zhao Yunlan. My first master tied that around my neck himself. Centuries ago, there was an accident. I lost it. Zhao Yunlan extended a hand. Let me see. Instead, Shen Wei moved the bell out of reach. I'm afraid you won't be able to pick it up. Recalling what had happened the night before, Zhao Yunlan gloomily blew a smoke ring. Daching ducked his head and grabbed the bell from Shen Wei, then left through the window without another word. It was rare for this steady tank of a cat to be so obviously weighed down by his thoughts. Zhao Yunlan tilted his head, listening. Daching? He left. Shen Wei closed the window, leaned down, and slowly caressed the corner of Zhao Yunlan's eye. I'll figure out a way to fix your eyes. As though something had just occurred to him, Zhao Yunlan gave a sudden smile and said, Actually, there's no rush. Instinct told Shen Wei that the next words out of Zhao Yunlan's mouth would be indecent, and his instinct was absolutely correct. Even blindness wasn't enough to put a damper on Zhao Yunlan's perverted streak. Not being able to see is awfully inconvenient. Can you help me shower tonight? Shaking off the grubby paw that had mysteriously begun to grope his butt, Shen Wei went into the kitchen without a word. Zhao Yunlan's smile faded as he closed his eyes and leaned back against the sofa, listening to the sounds coming from the kitchen. In the darkness, a rare peace descended on him. This particular moment was also enjoyable, was almost enjoyable. As his mind and body relaxed, Zhao Yunlan had the abrupt sense that there were weird shadows in front of him. His eyes shut open, but he still couldn't see anything, and the shadows were gone. We were having a perfectly good gay time, and now you had to go and be creepy? Concentrating now, he closed his eyes again and began counting his breaths as he collected his thoughts and emotions. After some time, the shadowy shapes reappeared. He could see a ball of green by his left hand, emitting a dim light. It was very pale, but the flow of the light was ethereally beautiful, and the shape looked familiar somehow. What was to his left? The windowsill, and on the windowsill, a plant a friend had given him. Could this possibly be the mythical heavenly eye? In the mortal realm, the heavenly eye, or the divine eye, was often confused with the third eye, but in reality, it was something else entirely. The heavenly eye was said to be the eye of the soul. The soul relied on and was trapped within the physical body, unless it was like the natural-born third eye of Erlong Shen. Comes with a footnote. Erlong Shen was a powerful martial god from Chinese mythology, portrayed as the nephew of the Jade Emperor in Investiture of the Gods and Journey to the West, and known for his third eye and faithful dog. Unless it was like the natural-born third eye of Erlong Shen, ordinary people's heavenly eyes were always closed. Zhao Yunlan never would have imagined that going blind would bring him the fortune of forcing his heavenly eye open. As Zhao Yunlan tried to concentrate on the spot between his eyebrows, his surroundings came into focus. More and more things became perceptible. First, it was the flowers on the windowsill, the cat fur on the sofa, the ancient texts on his bookshelf, and an antique painting hanging on his wall. The heavenly eye seemed to only be able to see things that had life or spirit. He was still unable to see the sofa, the coffee table, or any of the things made in modern times that had no spirit to them. Zhao Yunlan looked down at his own body and saw white light coursing through him. His left shoulder was empty, but on his right shoulder was a bright ball, radiant with beautiful light and colors. That must be his soul fire. Something about the light of his soul fire was familiar. He felt sure he had seen it somewhere before. A sudden realization made him spring to his feet. His knees slammed into the coffee table, but he didn't even take the time to grimace as he stumbled into the kitchen. He could hear the sound of vegetables being chopped, but Shen Way was invisible to him, perfectly blending in with the darkness, or maybe not so perfectly. A moment's study showed him to be even darker than the surrounding blackness. The only light about him came from the tiny pendant around his neck. The ball of fire in the pendant was identical to the sphere of light on Zhao Yunlan's right shoulder. Shen Way was prepping a head of cabbage. At the sound of movement, he glanced at Zhao Yunlan. "It's too chaotic in here. Don't come in." Zhao Yunlan ignored him. Following Shen Wei's voice, he walked in carefully, then slowly reached out and hugged Shen Way from behind. Resting his chin on Shen Wei's shoulder, he shut his eyes and tried to look at the cutting board with his newly acquired heavenly eye. But, perhaps because those vegetables had lost their vitality while being uprooted and frozen, he didn't see anything. There was only the faint scent of vegetable juices. Oh, God! Oh, jeez! I'm in the double digits now when it comes to reading volumes of danmei, and yet I still get surprised by art. Holy God. Also, man, once again, they know what art we want to see, these people. Whew. Then he looked down at Shen Way, who was in his arms. From the moment he'd embraced Shen Way, a bright blood red had begun spilling outward from Shen Wei's heart. It flowed throughout the absolute blackness of Shen Wei's silhouette like molten lava, outlining a slim, graceful figure in Zhao Yunlan's ink-black vision. It was as if life had suddenly burst into existence. Zhao Yunlan silently took this in for a while. When he finally spoke, it was to casually grumble, "What are you chopping? I don't eat this. I want meat. I'm not a rabbit. As an injured person, I'm petitioning for an improvement to my meals." Shen Way chuckled indulgently and lifted the lid of a small pot beside him. A hearty aroma of meat wafted out. "Don't be picky." As he said it, the fiery colors on his body softened. The bright flow of crimson took on a strikingly warm orange hue, like the first glimpse of the sun after the break of dawn. Shen Way let himself be hugged, and Zhao Yunlan moved along with him, swaying from side to side and listening to the sound of the knife on the cutting board. His eyes were dark. When he looked down, they didn't seem dull, only unspeakably deep. After another stretch of silence, Zhao Yunlan leaned in closer and asked, "Do you think I'm hot?" Shen Wei's hands paused. "Do you have something proper to say or not? Stop messing around." "It's perfectly proper." Zhao Yunlan cleared his throat. "Comrade Shen Way, consider this man beside you, an intellectual giant, a pioneer in his work, and a public servant who thinks only of the people, never himself. Do you think he's hot?" Shen Way was momentarily speechless, but then he laughed quietly. Looking down, he carefully cut the cabbage into strips. "Y'all ain't ready for this art. Y'all ain't ready for this art. You are simply not. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't be here right now, man." Holy shit. Holy shit. Do you look at that? Look at that. Look at it. Look. How dare they give us literally exactly what we want. In his hands, This simple task seemed like something to enjoy wholeheartedly, without a spare thought for anything else. Whether or not you're hot is irrelevant to me. You could be a hulking giant with a head covered in scabs and feet covered with sores. You could be hideous and repulsive, and still hold the exact same place in my heart. Demisexuality confirmed. Next thing I know, you'll be proposing to me, teased Zhao Yunlan. Even though it was just the two of them at home, the kitchen was no place for intimate behavior. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what he means. Sure, he's correct about that. Improper. So Shen Way was still somewhat shy. He nudged Zhao Yunlan with his shoulder. Get out of the way. I'm about to stir fry, so go sit somewhere. Zhao Yunlan obediently let go and took a step back, bumping up against the chilly metal of the sink. Almost casually, he asked, "Would you ever lie to me?" Shen Way paused, back still to him. "Would you?" Zhao Yunlan persisted. Shen Way kept facing away. After a moment, voice low, he said, "I will not lie to you, nor will I ever harm you." Zhao Yunlan observed Shen Wei's back with his heavenly eye. As he watched, the light flowing through Shen Wei slowly dimmed, like a firework burning out. It had happened in just the time it took him to say a few sentences. An inexplicable sadness welled up in his heart. "Okay, I believe you," he blurted out. Shen Wei suddenly turned. "With no proof but my words?" Zhao Yunlan smiled. "If it's you, I'll believe anything you say." They just keep steamrolling me. I tell you what. No respect for my capacity to handle things. After saying that, he couldn't bear to look at the light rising and falling on Shen Wei. He turned away, acting as though what he'd said was just idle chatter. He started rummaging through the kitchen shelves. "Where's my beef jerky?" he mumbled. "I remember there being a bag of beef jerky here." He was so flustered that he knocked over the plastic broom in the corner, stepped on it, and nearly fell on his face. Shen Wei's hands were wet from handling the cabbage. Afraid of getting cabbage juice all over Zhao Yunlan, all he could do was extend an arm to break his fall. Zhao Yunlan fell heavily against his chest. The apartment wasn't very big, so the kitchen was very small. God, I know that feel. It was just barely suitable for one person, let alone two grown men. Shen Wei was obliged to stay in that position and circle his arms around in front of Zhao Yunlan to rinse them under the faucet. His chin rested naturally on Zhao Yunlan's shoulder. Zhao Yunlan was suddenly still and silent. Once his hands were clean, Shen Wei let his arms hover around Zhao Yunlan as he steered him toward the door. "Even if you have jerky, it's long since expired by now. Stop looking. I put some snacks on the table earlier. Eat those if you're hungry, but don't eat too much. Food's almost ready." Lowering his gaze, Zhao Yunlan smiled. "I'm starving, but not for food." Shen Wei paused. "What do you want to eat then?" "Oh, honey. Oh, honey, if you have to ask." Zhao Yunlan tilted his head and felt around for Shen Wei's chin. Once he'd touched it, he lightly ran a fingertip from Shen Wei's jaw to his ear, then leaned in. "Ha ha ha! You," he murmured. "I want to eat you." As he was saying this, he happened to look directly at Shen Wei's face. Zhao Yunlan's eyes were very deep set, and when they were half closed, the shadow of his eyelashes fell on the tall bridge of his nose. Even though Shen Wei was fully aware that Zhao Yunlan couldn't see anything, it still gave the illusion of being gazed at with deep affection. Under that gaze, Shen Wei felt like his very soul was trembling. Zhao Yunlan smiled and moved even closer, breathing in the light fragrance of Shen Wei's shampoo. "Why so nervous?" You can try me out. I'm very gentle. Without a word, Shen Way dumped him on the sofa and ran away. She thinks she's funny. Zhao Yunlan stretched out his legs and lounged on the sofa like a lord, contemplating the idea of ordering a pair of red candles. He could light them at the head of the bed in the middle of the night, creating a romantic wedding night atmosphere. That might be what it would take to coax a certain gentleman out of his clothes. It's the fact that I've seen the show. Okay? Yeah. It's now retroactively putting all of this subtext underneath what I've already seen. It's a little much for one person to handle. Well into the evening, Zhao Yunlan's heart remained antsy with want. Shen Way, afraid he might be bored and restless from being unable to see, leaned against the headboard before bed and began reading a book to him. Shen Wei's voice was gentle and soft, with a perfect, deep resonance. As Zhao Yunlan listened, ensconced in this intellectual atmosphere, it wasn't an appreciation for culture that rose within him. It was his most primal urge, and probably what naturally followed that. Something suddenly caught Shen Wei's attention. He broke off mid-sentence, turning toward the window. With no warning, Zhao Yunlan rolled on top of him, catching him in a hug and pressing him down on the bed. "Don't look," he whispered, lips against Shen Wei's ear. "Turn off the lights." The room plunged into darkness. This is where we get closer as a live stream. This is when we become besties. Zhao Yunlan slipped a hand under Shen Wei's shirt, sending shivers through the entire length of his body. Shen Way seized Zhao Yunlan's wrist, holding his hand in place. Zhao Yunlan lowered his head further and nibbled at Shen Wei's collarbones. His tone was downright oily as he said, "It just takes one touch to get you hard. You miss me that much?" Shen Way was so perturbed that he could barely spare a thought for whoever was outside the window. Perturbed's a word for it. The wind carried a new sound, barely audible. The doggone woodblock. Zhao Yunlan's fingers, which were busily trailing fire everywhere they touched Shen Way, suddenly spelled out a message on his skin. "Don't move." Yanking the blanket up to completely cover Shen Way, Zhao Yunlan sat halfway up. His shirt was unbuttoned almost all the way to his waist, nearly falling off entirely, but his voice was full of cold steel. "If I were alone, I'd gladly welcome you, but as it stands, three's a crowd. I'm sure you understand." There was a light cough outside the window. The magistrate heard that the guardian's eyes were injured. He dispatched this lowly one to check on you. If I've disturbed you in any way, then I am truly... "The magistrate?" Zhao Yunlan raised an eyebrow, giving a meaningful laugh. "News sure reaches him quickly. I was only at the hospital today, and it's not even midnight yet, but here you are already. Well, I'm fine, my lord. You may go back and thank him for thinking of me." "Yes, of course," the person at the window replied quietly. The intense yin energy outside disappeared. Zhao Yunlan groped around on the bed. Shen Way grabbed his hand and said, "That was a reaper? What?" "Think about it, you dummy." Zhao Yunlan sighed. His fingers found Shen Wei's hair and gently smoothed it. Keeping his voice low, he said, "They're trying all sorts of ways to trick you. Some people in the netherworld know who Shen Way is, right?" Shen Way hesitated, then nodded. He'd been hanging around the mortal realm for decades in human guise. The fact that he did it to watch over someone might be too embarrassing for him to spread around, but the soul-executing emissary lingering in the mortal realm was rather a big deal. He had to have at least notified the 10 kings of the Yanlo courts. Your status is high enough that you didn't need to ever get involved with the other side, said Zhao Yunlan. They have their own concerns and priorities. When it comes to mortal or ghostly matters, everyone has their own agenda, and you... Are you worried for me? Shen Way asked quietly. Zhao Yunlan lowered his head, following Shen Wei's voice. What do you think? Shen Wei's grip tightened, and Zhao Yunlan found himself wrapped in a fierce embrace, with Shen Wei's face buried in the crook of his neck. The embrace continued for an eternity, and Shen Wei was incredibly strong. Zhao Yunlan had planned to take advantage of the mood and get up to a little bit more, but there was no breaking out of Shen Wei's hold. Shen Wei just kept holding him possessively, as though he had no intention of letting go until daybreak. Zhao Yunlan made a few futile attempts to free himself, but exhaustion caught up with him. With it came the realization that he had no choice but to fall asleep unsatisfied, letting his mind run wild with horny thoughts. He prepared himself for the most frustrating sleep of his life, so fired up that he felt on the verge of a nosebleed. Perhaps because Shen Wei was holding him too tightly, it really was a little uncomfortable. When Zhao Yunlan did drift off to sleep, he started to dream. He dreamed that he was in a cloudy, misty place, walking in circles. He was surrounded by ruins and debris, and there were countless people praying toward the sky. He spared them a glance and kept walking, eventually arriving at a place that was utterly dark and desolate. For some reason, he felt a surge of annoyance. He snapped his fingers to summon fire, but the fire went out before it could catch. Someone sighed deeply by his ear. Why did you have to go through all this effort over an offhand comment? The voice was difficult to describe. It seemed to bypass his ears entirely and pierce right through his heart. Zhao Yunlan gave a violent shudder, and then he was awake. It seemed like the sun must already be high in the sky. Shen Wei wasn't beside him anymore. He'd probably stepped out to buy something. Zhao Yunlan saw darkness when he opened his eyes, and darkness when he closed them. His heart beat like thunder, cold sweat beating on his back. Who had been speaking in the dream? Why did it sound like his own voice? That's the end of that chapter. We're on page 143 for chapter 11. Oh, shit. Hang on. Let me do page math. This one's short-ish? Yeah, this one's like a little under 10 pages. But it's 348. Where are we? Let's see. We were at 125. What have we read so far? So sorry, I have to do page math kind of live and in front of you. 125, 142. That's almost 20 pages. We try to get to... I don't know. It's kind of neither here nor there. Let's go ahead and... Oh, I'm trying really hard not to sneeze. Let's go ahead and take a break now. I'll go grab some more tea and sneeze and also walk off that chapter because, oh my god. And we shall return on the other side of the break with, once again, page 153 for chapter 12. Wait, hang on. No, sorry. We're on chapter 11. What is it with me and page numbers today? Why can't I just relay the accurate information? Page 143 for chapter 11. I don't know. It's a crazy day today. Whew. I shall return in just a few minutes. Go take a breather, take a break, take a walk, get some tea, and come back for more of whatever the fuck this is. I'll be right back. Hello. We are on page 143 for chapter 11. For the second half of the stream, I just bumped the mic, but it's fine. Let me click on over here so I have you guys in the chat, but not my face because that's distracting. Alrighty. What the hell kind of gay hijinks can they get up to? I probably shouldn't ask that question. I'm really just tempting fate. You know what? I take it back. I didn't ask anything. I didn't provoke anything. I did nothing of the kind. Nothing whatsoever. Whew. After hastily making himself presentable, Zhao Yunlan felt around on the coffee table for the bandages and medicine that they'd brought back from the hospital. He casually wound the bandages around his head a few times to cover his eyes. With a bit more feeling around, he found paper and a pen on the bedside table. Without worrying about what the paper was, he scrawled, "Gone to 4 Bright Avenue." That done, he left the apartment, counting his steps. No longer in the dream, his heart rate gradually slowed to normal. By the time the elevator opened on the ground floor, Zhao Yunlan had also gotten his breathing under control. Focusing on the heavenly eye between his eyebrows, he strode out into the world. He saw crowds of people on the street and quickly learned to discern between humans and ghosts. There was a soft blurriness around some figures, and those were living people. At first, he couldn't see very clearly at all. Everything was just a haze, but as he walked out of the neighborhood, it seemed as though he was adjusting to this way of looking at the world. The fuzzy edges of people's silhouettes started to sharpen. He began to see the 3 treasures gathered on the top of each person's head. As someone passed by him, it suddenly clicked. The soft ring around each living person was a filmy layer that covered them from head to toe, with weird patterns on its surface. At the intersection, Zhao Yunlan reached out to hail a taxi. Since he couldn't see, his only real option was to keep his hand extended and rely on luck. It was 10 minutes or so before an empty car pulled up. Feeling his way inside, he realized that the patterns on each person were actually text. Text that was very small and densely packed and in constant flux. For a few seconds, Zhao Yunlan couldn't help but stare at the driver. It wasn't until the driver prompted him that he came back to himself. "Sorry, 4 Bright Avenue, you can just drop me off at the entrance." The taxi driver glanced curiously at his bandaged eyes. "Young man, what's wrong with your eyes?" "Got hit while playing basketball," Zhao Yunlan lied casually. The driver asked, "Hi-ho, can you still see?" "There's medicine in my eyes, so I can't open them," Zhao Yunlan said. "I'll just have to be blind for a few days, that's all." The two chatted idly during the drive. When they arrived, the taxi stopped at the side of the road. Zhao Yunlan thought for a moment, then pulled his wallet from his pocket and handed it directly to the driver. "I can't see. Please just take whatever I owe you." The driver was taken aback. "That's very trusting of you." Zhao Yunlan chuckled. "There's not much cash in there anyway. Please take what you see fit." The driver hesitated a second longer, then printed a receipt and rifled through the wallet. Zhao Yunlan spent those seconds staring closely at the ever-changing words on the driver's body and listening to the rustling sound of him flipping through his wallet. The driver seemed to take something out, hesitate, and stuff it back in. A moment later, he took out a different bill, got change from his pocket, and then tucked the change and receipt into the wallet together. A corner of Zhao Yunlan's mouth lifted. As his vision grew clearer, he found he could make out the color of the text he was seeing. Black and red. The instant the driver put the change into the wallet, Zhao Yunlan saw a row of tiny red text flash across the man's body. So that's what it means. Zhao Yunlan thanked the driver, declining the offer to help him inside. The tiny text records someone's deeds. Red for merits, black for sins. I guess he didn't take advantage of a blind man. Zhao Yunlan could unmistakably feel that something was rapidly awakening within him. What was unclear was whether it was good or bad. Everything seemed to have started with the earthquake not long ago, the quake that revealed the Honga tribe's mountain river all. Had that earthquake really been caused by a natural shifting of the Earth's crust? The doorman who enjoyed carving bones saw him coming and set down the file he was working with. "Director Zhao," he called cheerfully. "Oh, hey, what happened to your eyes?" "An accident," Zhao Yunlan said, perfectly calm. "Li Shu, come give me a hand." But before Li Shu could step out of the gatehouse, someone else came dashing up. Shen Way grabbed Zhao Yunlan's extended hand, just barely keeping his grip and voice in check. "Couldn't you wait for me before wandering off? I came back from buying breakfast and you were gone. You scared me half to death. If you do that again, I'll..." Zhao Yunlan turned toward him. The perception granted by his heavenly eye just kept getting clearer and brighter, and now through it, he gazed at Shen Way. What he saw was row after row of the bright red text that represented Shen Wei's merits. Those crimson characters flashed into existence repeatedly, yet none of them lasted. They appeared with the swiftness of the tide, only to be washed away by vast waves of darkness, as ephemeral as marks in the sand. Zhao Yunlan's eyes suddenly stung as an emotion crashed over him, surging up from some place he couldn't identify. It was as though some memory had been buried deep for hundreds of thousands of years, and a hurricane had just passed through and blown away the deep layers of dust covering it. What was revealed was some naked, inescapable truth that stabbed into his heart, setting off cascading waves of pain. "I knew you'd come after me right away," Zhao Yunlan said smoothly. He was almost able to keep the tremble out of his voice. "It's good that you're here now. Come inside with me." The whole SID office went into a frenzy at Zhao Yunlan's sudden arrival. Da Qing had run off somewhere to be melodramatic. The people of the Special Investigations Department only now realized that, rather than going off to fool around someplace, their boss had gotten into an accident. Zhuhong unwound his bandages with trembling hands. When she saw his eyes, still bright but not quite able to focus, her own eyes reddened. Zhao Yunlan's fingers twitched, but he remembered he couldn't see and shouldn't grope blindly toward his female employees. A tad embarrassed, he lowered his hand again. "Which of us is blind here? I haven't shed a single tear, so what are you getting emotional for?" She flung the bandages at his face. "You cry? If you knew how to cry, we wouldn't be here. There's nowhere you wouldn't dare set foot. No one you wouldn't dare cross, right? You think you're second only to the heavens, don't you, fucking dumbass?" After a moment of silence, Zhao Yunlan said, "Okay, this dumbass has heard you." Zhuhong rounded on Shen Way and said, instead, "Don't you..." Too much happening. "Don't you like him?" she demanded. "Aren't you very powerful? Where were you when this happened to him?" Chu Shuzhe and Lin Jing exchanged a glance. Something about this scene seemed not quite right. Of course, Zhao Yunlan felt it too. He took a stab at smoothing things over with a joke. He tugged on Shen Wei's sleeve, deploying his most mischievous grin. "You like me? How come you've never mentioned it? Shen Laoshe, I think you have a very serious problem. If you like me, why would you tell her about it and not me?" Zhuhong had no use for his olive branch. "You shut up!" His smile vanished as easily as it had appeared. "That's enough. I got into an accident while dealing with a private matter. What does it have to do with him? Do the two of us have to be tied together every second of the day? When the three-legged race becomes an official Olympic sport, let me know." Hurt crept into Zhuhong's fierce gaze. Shen Wei finally had to speak up. "I should have..." Brow furrowed, Zhao Yunlan gave a dismissive wave. "I don't want to talk about this right now. We can save these trivial matters for later. Right now, all of you shut up." He took a soul-guarding order from his pocket. As it began to burn, Zhao Yunlan quietly said, "Da Qing, come here for a second." In response, a collar bell jingled, and Da Qing crept out of the library from beyond the wall. The black cat jumped onto Zhao Yunlan's legs silently and studied his eyes, then hopped up on the table. "I skimmed a few books, and I think I sort of understand what's wrong with your eyes. You said the earth flames you triggered set that little crow on fire, and then he sacrificed himself to the golden bell, right? I suspect what happened is that the spiritual chime and earth fire collided, resulting in too much yin energy. Since you were right in the middle of it, your eyes were injured. That's why you've temporarily lost your sight." Zhao Yunlan nodded nonchalantly, but Shen Wei immediately latched onto the key point. "Temporarily?" Da Qing made an affirmative sound, but glanced at Zhao Yunlan. He had the sudden suspicion that Zhao Yunlan knew something. But Shen Way was too worried to think straight and didn't notice. He barreled on to his next question. How long will it take him to recover? What medicines does he need? Where can they be found? One look at Shen Way told Da Qing that he was genuinely worried. The cat sighed to himself and continued, The Flower Yao tribe, who mostly keep to themselves, have something very precious that they call the nectar of 1,000 essences. Legend says they make it from the best parts of the stamens from 99 varieties of flowers, 33 each from the mortal realm, the heavens, and the netherworld. It's an effective antidote for hundreds of poisons and gentle and nourishing to boot, so it's perfect for eye injuries. The best place to find them is probably at the year-end Yao market, Zhao Yunlan said, finishing his sentence. Da Qing stilled. How did you know? Zhao Yunlan didn't answer right away. He sat and petted the cat's head, turning something over in his mind. Finally, he said, If you're done, there's something I need to say. First, from now on, any communication, of any kind, with the netherworld needs to be put in writing so that I'll have a copy. Don't leave out a single word. Second, no outsiders are allowed on the premises here. If anyone drops by with New Year's gifts, receive them at the gatehouse. Third, spread the word outside our office that we're entering the year-end wrap-up period. Try not to accept any new cases unless the order comes from the minister himself. And fourth, if anyone under the jurisdiction of the soul guarding order needs to come in late or needs a day off, you must have me sign off on it. I need to know where you all are at all times. Then the Yao market? Zhu began. That's not a big deal. Shen Way can accompany me, said Zhao Yunlan. And that reminds me, Zhu, I've told them to set up a private room for you on the 3rd floor. For now, when you can't transform easily and need to rest, stay there. Don't take any leave. His orders given, Zhao Yunlan stood up using the support of the table and began to make his way toward the library beyond the wall, without waiting for anyone's response. I have something I need to discuss with Sung Zan. Shen Way, wait for me for a bit. Everyone else tell the other units what I just said. The library was brightly lit. Seeing Zhao Yunlan, Sung Zan greeted him cheerfully. Hello, Director Zhao Slutterer. What the hell? Zhao Yunlan paused. Who taught you that? Cat Slutterer. Sung Zan was fully aware that his pronunciation wasn't good, so he made a determined effort to correct himself. Director Zhao Slutterer. Zhao Yunlan chuckled and didn't bother asking any further. Opening his heavenly eye, he realized he could see the outlines of most of the books. He glanced around, then turned back to Sung Zan. Find me that book I read the other day. Sung Zan retrieved Soul Book without hesitation. It was genuinely impressive that despite being illiterate, he could remember the precise location of each and every book. The title on the book's cover was plainly visible to the heavenly eye. The book flipped itself open before he even had a chance to touch it. He noticed something at once that hadn't been so apparent the last time he'd read it. A page had clearly been ripped out. To his heavenly eye, the torn page seemed to seep a purplish black blood. Zhao Yunlan snapped the book close. Sung Zan observed his expression carefully. After a few moments, Zhao Yunlan quietly asked, Do you believe there are perfect coincidences in this world? Sung Zan chewed over the question, working hard to figure out what coincidence meant. Thanks to the language barrier, he always seemed a little stupid. It was often all too easy for the others to forget that he had been a slave who'd turned the fate of an entire tribe. Only when he was silent did his innate spirit and zeal show through. Sung Zan Speaking of people who cannot speak, Sung Zan shook his head. In a rare instance of perfect pronunciation, he said, I don't. Neither do I, Zhao Yunlan said slowly. As the one possessing the soul guarding order, all I wanted was to fulfill my duty of watching over the mortal realm, but some people just don't want to let me live in peace. The sentence was too complicated with all its nouns. Sung Zan didn't completely follow, but Zhao Yunlan's intentions were plain in his expression. What can I do to help? Zhao Yunlan looked down. Pass me a piece of paper. Working from memory, he wrote down what the Crow Yao had said to him that night. Zhao Yunlan had made a show of not understanding, but of course he understood perfectly well. In writing it out now, he reproduced it exactly. At the end... Smart bullshit. At the end of the row of text, he wrote the word Kunlun, then underlined it repeatedly. I want every book containing this word. He tapped on Kunlun. Don't mention it to anyone, not even Wang Zhang. Thanks, bro. In Sung Zan's mind, Zhao Yunlan was halfway to being a savior. Sung Zan might have been a self-taught conspirator, but one of the greatest qualities of his people still ran bone deep. He knew when to love and when to hate. Deadly serious, he said, "Leave it to me, Director Zhao Slutterer." Zhao Yunlan responded with something that could have been a smile. "Okay, and I'll go kick that fat-ass Da Ching for you." End of the chapter, by the way. We are on page 153 for chapter 12. Whew. All right. Dragon City's Yao banquet was planned for the 28th day of the year's final lunar month. As it happened, this year, the last month, once again had only 29 days, so the banquet was being held on the last day before Lunar New Year's Eve. Early that morning, Zhao Yunlan's invitation to the Yao market had arrived by Sparrow. The cleaning staff had left his office bright and spotless. When the curtains on the room's huge floor-to-ceiling window were open, the room was flooded with winter sunlight. With the heat cranked all the way up, there was no need to wear layers for warmth. The office held 2 giant taro plants, green and plump, and a tank by the door contained a relaxed, carefree silver arowana. I'm assuming arowana is a type of fish. Leisurely Guqin music flowed through the speakers. The office was spacious, and its 2 occupants had each claimed half. After watering the plants, Shen Way sat and read a book. He was temporarily serving as Zhao Yunlan's assistant until his injured eyes recovered. Zhao Yunlan had asked Shen Way to mix a bowl of cinnabar and was now sitting at the table with the cinnabar and a thick stack of yellow paper, practicing drawing talismans with his eyes closed. The first ones he drew were a mess, but as he slowly got used to drawing blind, the activity went from an idle time killer to a way to relax and calm his mind. It wasn't long before he had a row of evil warding talismans lined up along the edge of his desk. Anyone who walked through the door could feel their warm, abundant energy. Zhao Yunlan normally lacked the patience for this kind of work, so it always fell to Chu Shujie. But right now, perhaps it was due to his blindness, perhaps he was affected by Shen Wei's presence, but currently he sat quietly and calmly in a rare moment of stillness. When Zhu Hong knocked and came in, what she saw was 2 people who brought out the best in each other without getting in each other's way. She paused in the doorway, gripped by the feeling that if she entered, her presence would be completely extraneous. It all seemed so pointless. She bit her lip and gave Shen Way a cold nod, then addressed Zhao Yunlan from the threshold. "I need to head out for a bit. The year-end bonus has arrived, so I have to make a trip to the bank for Wangzhong." Zhao Yunlan, the broke bastard, immediately perked up. "Okay, sounds good." Next, Zhu Hong took a form from her document folder. "I also have our estimated budget for the department's New Year's Eve dinner. In addition to food, we'll need to purchase offerings for the gods in advance. I'll read the list to you. If it all sounds good, I'll get your signature and then go and request funds from the finance department." She read through the list while Zhao Yunlan listened. Then he signed where she touched the paper. Once they'd taken care of official business, Zhu Hong finally glanced at Shen Way before awkwardly asking, Will you still bring in the new year with us this year?" Zhao Yunlan didn't even look up. "Well, yeah, where else would I go?" A hint of happiness finally showed on Zhu Hong's face, only to vanish a moment later when Zhao Yunlan continued, "Not only that, but I'll be bringing the family, right, wifey?" No. Zhao! Jesus Christ! Whether because Shen Way was already used to Zhao Yunlan's flirting or because of Zhu Hong's presence, Shen Way didn't put up a fight. He simply smiled with a playful, "Oh, shut up," in response. Zhu Hong's expression clouded over. "Okay," she said gloomily. "I'm off then." Oh, hey, wait a second, Zhao Yunlan said. He tidied up his finished evil-warding talismans and handed them to her. There's a little shop at the far end of the antique street behind that large pagoda tree. They don't have a sign. It's just an old man by the door. Go in and have him take a look at these. Tell him the price is the same as always. He'll know. But let him know I drew these while blind, so make sure he examines them carefully. If any of them are flawed, you can give him a discount. Zhuhong stuffed them into the pocket of her down jacket. You sell paper talismans? I have to support my family. Zhao Yunlan stretched out his back. I need to bring in a little extra income. I just bought a house and now I desperately need money to renovate. Zhuhong didn't even wait for him to finish before walking away. She'd intended to ask if he needed her to accompany him to the Yao market that night, but that was clearly unnecessary. The door slammed behind her. Shen Way looked up from his ancient text. Do you think she, has feelings for... Zhao Yunlin spread out a new piece of yellow paper, measuring with his fingers as he spoke. I hadn't noticed it before, but now that I do know, I should do something about it before it's too late. Like maybe, I don't know, prod her and make her life miserable? Just toss out things carelessly? Shen Way sighed, and Zhao Yunlan chuckled. What are you sighing for? What future is there for a workplace romance? Besides, humans and Yao don't belong together. What's the point in getting involved? Zhao Yunlan only meant exactly what he said, but Shen Way read more into it than he'd intended. There was a brief silence before Shen Way asked, Then you and I, as a ghost and a human, shouldn't we stay apart? What? Zhao Yunlan reflexively reached out, getting cinnabar all over his hand. After a frozen second, he exclaimed, We're not the same at all. I like you so much. I'm so done with this man. He said it so casually, as if there were nothing sweet and romantic about the words. It might have been the kind of idle chit-chat people exchange while enjoying tea and a lovely fragrance together. As snow blanketed the world outside, such simple words seemed ordinary, yet warm with sincerity. A hand suddenly pressed against the hand Zhao Yunlan was using to hold the talisman in place. The touch interrupted the movement of the brush, and the spiritual energy leaked out of the talisman. Just like that, it went to waste. At some point, Shen Way had closed the distance between them, one of my favorite phrases. Now he placed his hands on the chair's armrests, trapping Zhao Yunlan with his arms. Another one of my favorite phrases. Almost piously, Shen Way closed his eyes and leaned in close. He held his breath, and there was the faintest quiver to his eyelashes. Ever so carefully, he kissed the tip of Zhao Yunlan's nose. Then, even more slowly, he dared to move his mouth lower. This cautious exploration continued until his lips brushed Zhao Yunlan's. It was incredibly gentle and warm, even as he parted Zhao Yunlan's lips, feeling their slight dryness and dipping so softly between them. There was no sense at all that he sought anything more than this. He was so helplessly in love, yearning for the sweetness of a kiss, for the simple touch of skin on skin. This man before him was like some sort of deadly poison. Shen Way had struggled with all his might and still failed to resist. He had only fallen ever deeper. At that blissful moment, someone came in unannounced and saw a scene they shouldn't have been privy to. They backed right out again while muttering a curse. The sound of the door startled Shen Way and made him straighten up in a panic. He coughed dryly, as though trying to hide something. Back outside, Da Qing scratched at the door, pretending nothing had happened. Boss, he called, dragging it out. Director Zhao, are you there? You busy? Zhao Yunlan's expression was murderous. Get the fuck in here already. Da Qing eagerly ran in, giving Shen Way a curious look. He'd never seen such an easily embarrassed human around Zhao Yunlan before. Shen Wei's expression just then wouldn't have been out of place in a photo of a handcuffed sex worker accompanying an article denouncing pornography and illegal activities. His deep blush had crept almost to his neck. It really did make Shen Way seem like a beauty among peach blossoms, as if he belonged in a painting where an exquisite countenance and stunning flowers complemented each other flawlessly. No wonder Zhao Yunlan, the incorrigible pervert, had relentlessly pursued him for over half a year, yet still not managed to take a bite. Da Qing raised his tail, gratified by Zhao Yunlan's misfortunes and the pleasing thought that, no matter how lovely Shen Way looked right now, Zhao Yunlan was denied the sight of him. Impatiently, the incorrigible pervert in question snapped, "You have 2 minutes. If you dare say a single word of bullshit, I'll skin you and turn you into a scarf." The black cat perched on the desk. "I wrote to the flower tribe. You received an invitation, right? After all, you know plenty of Yao. Tonight, after dusk, someone will be waiting for you at the west entrance to Antique Street. You can head right on over. Don't forget to bring a gift." This time, the look he gave Shen Way was a little worried. "Shen Laoshe knows the customs, right?" Shen Way nodded. "Don't worry. I'll take care of him." That was a relief for Da Qing, who still believed that humans required some sense of shame to keep them from just endlessly sinking lower. If there was a point past which they wouldn't sink, they could be depended upon. Shen Laoshe certainly looked more dependable than a certain someone. Zhao Yunlan was about to order their uninvited guest out when his phone rang. He carelessly felt around for it and picked it up. He couldn't see the caller ID, but Da Qing could. It read, Empress Dowager. The cat immediately perked up and paid attention, keen to see Zhao Yunlan make a fool of himself. Zhao Yunlan answered very officially, "Hello, this is Special Investigations Department Director Zhao." His voice suddenly dropped an octave and softened. He was nearly bowing as he said, I didn't see just now. I'm so sorry, Mom, truly." The change in his posture was like night and day. He went from sitting boldly on his swivel chair looking powerful and domineering to shrinking into a ball. Da Qing fell over in silent laughter. "No, I wouldn't dare forget," Zhao Yunlan was saying. "I honestly have something to do tonight, really. I really do." He sighed. "Please stop asking. It's to do with work. No, when have I ever gone out to fool around? Even if I wanted to, where would I even go to have fun on such a cold day?" Shen Way stood off to the side, listening to Zhao Yunlan conversing with the person on the other end. Zhao Yunlan's side of the conversation was affectionate, occasionally punctuated by whining. He is talking to his mother. At first, Shen Way smiled to hear it, but then an involuntary darkness shadowed his eyes. It suddenly struck him more clearly than ever that Zhao Yunlan was a flesh-and-blood human, someone with parents. Unlike Shen Way, he had countless connections to the mortal realm. Perhaps thinking that the call would dash his handsome, noble image to pieces, Zhao Yunlan got up, felt his way around the table, and shut himself in the inner room. Da Qing cleaned his claws. He and Shen Way studied each other for a while, and then he asked, "Are you human?" Shen Way didn't know how to respond to that. Da Qing hurried to explain. "No, don't misunderstand. That's not an insult. I mean it literally. Literally, you understand. As in, you human or something else. Something not human, you know?" The question hit Shen Way right where it hurt. After a bit more silence, he shook his head. To his surprise, Da Qing let out a sigh of relief. Talking more to himself than Shen Way, he said, "It's good that you're not human. Not human. That little brat has such a punchable face, but he's not a bad person. He really likes you, so don't betray his trust." Shen Way said simply, "How could I? As long as he still wants me, I will not betray him in life or death." It's the steadfastness. It's the frankness. It's just the open declarations of... Da Qing stared up into his eyes, struck by the sheer weight of the sincerity he saw there. Many, many years had passed since he'd seen such sincerity in anyone. For a moment he was too shocked to move. He was still lost in thought when Zhao Yunlan came back after finishing his call. Da Qing leapt down and twined around his legs. "What did the old lady say? I want to eat her pan-fried little croakers." "Eat my ass and fuck off. Don't trip me." Zhao Yunlan extended a leg, trying to push him away. Daching was having none of that. With both front paws, he dug firmly into Zhao Yunlan's pant leg. His spherical body swayed in the air as he yelled, "I want to eat fried little fish. I'll take you, all right? I'll take you, my damn cat ancestor." Zhao Yunlan bent down and grabbed Daching by the scruff of his neck, tossed him aside, and then slapped him on the butt. "I'll take you on the evening of New Year's Day. Oh, actually, my mom mentioned you just now." Daching was delighted. "Mentioned me? Did she praise me?" She said, "That cat's lived so many years now, so he probably won't be with us much longer. She told me to treat you better." Daching slumped to his butt on top of Zhao Yunlan's foot, but Zhao Yunlan was ready for him. Quickly pulling his foot away, he turned to Shen Way, somehow containing his laughter. "I told her to prepare for an extra person. Do you have other plans? Do you want to come home with me?" Caught completely off guard, Shen Way froze. It took him some time to find his voice. With difficulty, he said, "Me? No, I couldn't. It's the new year, and I'm an outsider." "An outsider?" Zhao Yunlan grabbed his collar. "What, are you planning to have your way with me and toss me aside when you've had your fill?" "What are you saying?" Daching had no interest in watching them. He slipped out through the door, which was barely open, and deftly closed it behind him with his hind paw. That's a scene break. Good lord. That evening, Shen Way drove them to Antique Street. Zhao Yunlan wore a pair of sunglasses and carried a cane, and Shen Way somehow managed to spare one hand to guide him while carrying a lacquer box in the other. There were 4 layers inside the box. The first held Lingjia mushrooms and rare essences from the mountains. The second held ancient ritual instruments of gold and jade. The third held pearls and dragon's beard from the bottom of the sea, and the fourth held black iron with a golden sheen from under the Huangquan River. Altogether, Shen Way was holding hundreds of kilograms in one hand, but so easily that it seemed weightless. Antique Street didn't have a western entrance. Its westernmost point stopped at a dead end. The few shops there had long since closed up for the new year. There was only a red paper lantern hanging on the pagoda tree, casting a rounded light upon the mottled wall. When the pair walked under the lantern, a shadow flashed before them and a horse-drawn carriage materialized out of thin air. Someone stepped down from the carriage. They were tall and lanky, wearing a long robe, and their head was that of a fox. From a distance it would seem like someone wearing a furry mask. The fox's hands were gathered within their sleeves, and their long, thin eyes sneakily lingered on the box Shen Way held. They bowed. "Welcome, honored guests. Please come this way." There were Yao markets everywhere, like the ones in the olden days where people gathered from different villages to trade. They were usually held once a year. In some places they were spirited occasions, in some they were quieter affairs. Dragon City was too urban, glutted with humans and their lively energy. As the saying goes, the best place to disappear is in a city. And urban centers might be a melting pot of people of all kinds, but it wasn't actually suitable for cultivation. Ordinary Yao, unless they had some connection to mortal life or had come a great way seeking closure on unfinished business, usually did not choose to live in places like this for the sake of their cultivation prospects. As a result, the local Yao market was on the quieter side. Ever since Zhao Yunlan's Special Investigations Department had set up shop in Dragon City, countless Yao had spied for him and called him bro, but he had never been to the Yao market. It was the Yao's equivalent of the Lunar New Year's Eve dinner. No matter how good their relationship might be, any outsider with common sense would know not to stick their nose into an occasion like this. Sitting in the Yao's horse-drawn carriage, Zhao Yunlan had a sudden thought. He smiled. "What is it?" asked Shen Way. Shen Wei's hand was still holding his. Zhao Yunlan squeezed it, then lowered his voice, pitching it to blend with the sound of the wheels. "I was just thinking about how traditionally our relationship has progressed. First we got to know each other, and then we exchanged information about our respective backgrounds. The next step, starting with holding hands, is to go shopping together and go out on dates. If we continue down this road, we'll soon be able to meet the parents and get married. Aware of Fox's keen hearing, Shen Way glanced outside. We can talk about this after we get back tonight, he murmured. However, Zhao Yunlan's shame was nowhere to be seen. And just how would you like to talk? Shen Way did not deign to respond. Zhao Yunlan winked. Oh, dear Gaga, I want you so badly I can't stand it. Won't you please give me what I want? Angry with embarrassment, Shen Way shook off Zhao Yunlan's hand. But then, seeing Zhao Yunlan's hand grasping aimlessly in the air, he gave in after a moment's hesitation and subtly took hold of it again. It wasn't clear whether the fox had heard or not, but the carriage ride was very smooth. After about 15 minutes, it came to a stop, and their fox guide drew open the curtain, inviting them to descend. Cold wind blew inside. Not too far away, there was the sound of a rough duet between a chin and a xiao. The melody was somber, but the players were obliged to conjure a lively atmosphere in spite of it. The overall effect was somewhat unsettling. To the left and right of the entrance stood two greeters, both human-bodied with the heads of horses. A man with a snake's tail rather than legs stood in wait with them. This was another tradition of the Yao market. Everyone in attendance had to display part of their original form so that younger attendees with lower cultivation could see who they were dealing with, thus preventing any unhappy misunderstandings. The snake-bodied man came up to them. Guardian, you've arrived. It was bitterly cold. The snake tribe, due to their nature, were reluctant to venture out during the winter. Normally, most wouldn't attend these festivities, only sending a couple of representatives to make a brief appearance. This snake tribe man was clearly waiting for Zhao Yunlan. Zhao Yunlan listened carefully. My eyes aren't working well just now, but if I haven't misheard, your fourth uncle, correct? Thank you, Guardian, for remembering, replied the snake tribe man. Come in. Zhu Hong has explained the situation to me. If you need anything, just let me know. Shen Way handed the lacquer box to the horse-headed greeters and guided Zhao Yunlan in. Inside was a pedestrian street about 100 meters long. Along the sides were roads paved with long stone slabs, and between them was a long, narrow river crossed by a little stone bridge on which a stage had been assembled. Crowds bustled on both sides of the river. There were colorful lanterns and streamers everywhere, and most people walking among them were half human, half beast. Some Yao had set up stalls and were selling their wares to the other tribes before the banquet started. Fourth uncle led Zhao Yunlan and Shen Way directly to the bridge. There was still a light layer of snow on its frigid stone surface, but thin, flowering vines had wrapped around the small posts at each end. Pale yellow flowers grew sparsely along the vines. Shit, that's beautiful! Jeez! Addressing a small flower, fourth uncle said, Miss Winter Jasmine, the guardian has arrived. Please come out to meet him. Hearing that, the thin winter jasmine vine suddenly exploded with growth, instantly spreading all over the bridge like a flower carpet. Countless narrow, fresh buds burst into life, blooming everywhere. From among the flowers, a girl rose. She was human from the waist up, but her bottom half was still made of flowering vines. She looked about 14 or 15, with her hair framing her face in two bunches. Her long, thin eyes sized up Zhao Yunlan before turning to Shen Way. For some reason, Winter Jasmine seemed to fear Shen Way. Her gaze swept across him hastily before she looked back to Zhao Yunlan. All smiles, she said, Uncle Black Cat said the guardian is a dreamboat. So, Dreamboat Gaga, why are you wearing such large sunglasses? Zhao Yunlan took the sunglasses off and hung them from his collar. So people will take pity on me. Perhaps if a sweet young lady like you saw that a handsome Gaga like me is blind, you'd give me a little honey? Winter Jasmine giggled as she looked closely at his eyes before asking fourth uncle, What's wrong with the Crow tribe? Why are they going around messing with mortals for no reason? Fourth uncle patted her on the head and didn't answer. Winter Jasmine surveyed their surroundings. Did not a single one of the Crow tribe come to the banquet this year? Not here, nor to the other markets, Fourth uncle said. But you kids shouldn't worry about such matters. Concentrate on cultivating. When spring comes, bloom properly. Murmuring in agreement, Winter Jasmine took out a small bottle and placed it in Zhao Yunlan's palm. The chief of our tribe asked me to bring this to the Guardian, and also told me to relay this message. In the future, if the Guardian needs anything, just let us know. We're all at your disposal. A little overwhelmed by the unexpected favor, Zhao Yunlan took a moment before replying, At my disposal? No, the esteemed chief is showing far too much courtesy. Before he finished speaking, a little monkey leaped onto the stage. It was holding a bronze gong, which it forcefully struck once. All the Yao immediately quieted down. Along the side of the road, far more stone chairs and tables were quickly set out. Hi-yo, Winter Jasmine exclaimed. The banquet's about to start. I have to go on stage. Guardian Gaga, I can't talk any longer. Take care. Wait, Zhao Yunlan began, but Winter Jasmine had already shifted into a tremendous number of vines. She quickly curled up along the entire stone bridge, wrapping each post in flowers. Together with the fine dusting of snow, the bridge seemed to bloom with life. Zhao Yunlan hadn't even had time to take his other hand out of his pocket, where he was carrying something Daching had given him. Apparently it had belonged to the past guardian, which now seemed to mean it was a treasured belonging from his past life, or his past life. It was a tiny luminescent cup carved with moonflowers, indescribably intricate and lovely. The cup was said to be able to store moonlight. For the flower Yao, it was a valuable object for cultivation. Zhao Yunlan had intended to exchange it for the flower Yao's nectar of 1,000 essences, but not only had they given him the nectar, they gave it as though it were an offering. He had no idea what to make of it. Thinking it over, Zhao Yunlan turned to tell Shen Way that they should leave. As he moved, he bumped into a stone table. Shen Way swiftly grabbed him around the waist, turning and holding him close to block the view of the crowd of little Yao who were trying to sneak a peek. Shen Way addressed Fourth Uncle. We are outsiders here, and this is the Yao banquet. We shouldn't impose any further, so we'll take our leave now. Fourth Uncle took note of Shen Wei's possessive behavior. Seats have already been prepared for you both. You are our honored guests. At least have a drink and warm up before you go. Shen Wei's brow furrowed. Fourth Uncle continued, As the coming of the year is that of the snake, I am hosting the banquet tonight. Please excuse me. Without waiting for Shen Way to object, he slithered away, dragging his floor-length sleeves as he slowly ascended the steps onto the tall stage on the bridge. Music filled the air again, but it was very different from the eerie Qin and Shao duet. This was a sacrificial song passed down from the beginning of time. It might be because I only recently rewatched Game of Thrones, but I just got the little tingle of Red Wedding vibes. I don't think that's actually happening here, but... Ooh. A woman's voice clearly rang out in the distance. All under heaven sprang forth from Buzhou. The Yao all suddenly looked solemn. Eyes downcast, Fourth Uncle stood respectfully while adjusting his collar. In his deep, resonant voice, he declared, All that is old is gone. Welcome all that is new. At year's end, the Yao honor the 3 sages, the mountain god of the great wild, and those who came before. All the Yao stood up and bowed to the northwest. The woman picked the song back up, dragging out each syllable. Oh, lyrics. Okay, song lyrics. In the great wild, atop the clouds, the cloven peak bears heaven's weight. The great lord of water, Jurong's son, struck it on dragonback, shifting the stars. Very quietly, Zhao Yunlan asked Shen Way, Who were they singing about? It sounds like the water god, Gong Gong. For some reason, Shen Wei's expression was growing darker by the second. Was all he said. Is that the part where Gong Gong knocked down Buzhou Mountain? Shen Way made another affirmative sound. Baffled, Zhao Yunlan persisted. But isn't Gong Gong the god of water? Who's this mountain god of the great wild? God of which mountain? I've never heard of Buzhou also having a mountain god. This time, Shen Way took even longer to reply, and his answer was vague. Maybe it does have one? I don't know the details of things that happened back in those times. Something in his voice told Zhao Yunlan to stop pressing. He fell silent, idly scratching his fingernail across his palm and occasionally tapping along to the beat of the song. The song was long and its lyrics dragged. It waxed on about Zhuanshu. Hey! Zhuanshu comes with a footnote. An emperor from Chinese mythology said to be the grandson of the Yellow Emperor. It waxed on about Zhuanshu and Gonggong's battle, and how Gonggong, in a fit of rage, had ultimately damaged public property by toppling Buzhou Mountain. The song seemed to attribute the current natural order, with the sun rising in the east and setting in the west, entirely to this rude act of vandalism. It gave the strong impression that the story was significant to the origin of the Yao, but the lyrics never actually explained the connection. Plenty of historical records were incomplete, forcing people to read between the lines and deduce that there were other factors at play. That was inevitably even more true of ancient and unreliable things like legends and myths from the beginning of time. Zhao Yunlan knew he shouldn't read too much into a few old lyrics, but he couldn't help himself. Some tiny voice in his heart was absolutely insistent that those seemingly unrelated things were actually tremendously significant. The thing that particularly nagged at him was this mountain god of the great wild. Zhao Yunlan had never heard of primordial gods fulfilling multiple roles at once, so if Gonggong was the water god, he obviously couldn't also be this mountain god, whom the Yao seemed to regard as just one step below the three sages. In myths, mountain gods were always minor deities, on about the same level as the local lords of the land. That comes with a footnote. Lords of the land are minor deities who oversee a specific area of the land. What kind of random country bumpkin official had managed to leave behind such a lasting legacy? Zhao Yunlan's tapping fingertips stilled. The Crow Yao's words sprang to mind, especially one term in particular. Kunlun. Kunlun Mountain. After endless, pointless formalities, the Yao finally finished their worship and sat back down. Beautiful female Yao walked through the crowd, offering tea and drinks. The Yao banquet had officially begun. Shen Way refused any alcohol with the excuse that he was driving. He waited until Zhao Yunlan had had a cup before saying, "Shall we take our leave now?" Zhao Yunlan didn't know why he was in such a rush, but also saw no point in staying any longer. He nodded and was about to stand up when there was a sudden commotion among the gathered Yao. He turned to listen. "What's happening?" Shen Way glanced at what was unfolding on the stage. That snake pushed a half-Yao man onto the stage. The half-Yao's innate Yao energy is spilling out of him. He's covered in a black aura and reeks of blood, so he must be riddled with sin. To keep heavenly retribution from affecting others when it strikes him, the Yao are probably going to deal with him first, in accordance with tradition. Had Go Cheng-chung been there, he would have recognized this half-Yao man as the one he'd nearly run over the other day. This was an affair that didn't involve them, so Zhao Yunlan lost interest. While fourth uncle recited the person's crimes, Zhao Yunlan held out his arm to Shen Way and allowed himself to be led away. But then, having finished the litany of crimes, fourth uncle's declaration continued. This half-Yao of the Crow tribe has gone astray and caused great harm to many in defiance of the heavens. In humility we acknowledge the wrongs of one of our own. Humbly do we enact the justice of the heavens. At the words Crow tribe, Zhao Yunlan and Shen Way both stopped dead in their tracks. At the same moment, a painfully hoarse voice rang out and interrupted fourth uncle. "Hold it!" Some note in that voice sounded inexplicably ominous. Shen Way pulled Zhao Yunlan behind him, gaze growing cold. A line of short, unremarkable-looking people in black robes stood in a neat row across the entrance to the Yao market. Every one of them had pitch-black wings on their backs. The Crow tribe had arrived. That's the end of the chapter. And did we hit or pass? We are right bang in the middle of where we should be, page count wise. So I believe, let me just, on the off chance that this is not a short chapter coming up. So we are going to end here for today. We are on page 173 for chapter 13. Ooh. The plot is plotting. I kind of remember Flower Chick, Jasmine. I remember her popping up in the show. And I remember kind of what the crow, like Crowley. I remember what the crow people looked like, but I can't remember exactly what their whole situation was. So, in a rare occurrence of ADHD being beneficial, I'll be experiencing that context all over again. Assuming it's the same as the show, which I have no idea. But, so, I will be here on Thursday. I do have to go pretty quickly today. As I said earlier, I will be on Tumblr this evening, if you would like to swing by for whatever reason. And I will be here on Thursday at the same time because I read gay stuff on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3 p.m. now Eastern Daylight Time to 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I hope you enjoyed yourself. This had a nice little bit of plot stuffs beginning while also being extremely gay. We really got the best of both worlds today. We really won. We really won today. So I will see you guys on Thursday. Please take care of yourselves. I am feeling very good and optimistic about where we're going in this little section. I'm very curious to see how that plays out. And we will do that on Thursday. Once again, take care of yourselves. Take care of yourself. And I will see you in a couple of days.